Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this ordinary meeting of Wingecarribee Shire Council on Wednesday the 19th of July. If I could remind everybody to turn your mobiles onto silent if you haven't already done so, and the fact that this meeting is being recorded. Acknowledgement of country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledge the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. I also would like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here or watching the broadcast today. Statement of ethical obligations. As Administrator, I will undertake the duties of the Office of Administrator in the best interest of the people of the Wingecarribee Shire Council area and to act faithfully and impartially, carrying out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment. I am committed to the declaration of conflicts of interest in relation to items listed for consideration on the agenda or which are considered at this meeting in accordance with the Code of Conduct and Code of Meeting Practice. Obviously there are no apologies. I'll now deal with minutes of previous meetings. I would move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on 21 June 2023 be adopted as a true and correct record of the proceedings of the meeting and declare that carried. I would move that the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of Council held on the 28th of June be adopted as a correct recording of the proceedings of the meeting and declare that carried. General Manager, declarations of interest?
There are no declarations, Mr. May.
Thank you. I have 1 minute that was circulated last night, so I won't be reading it. It relates to, in effect, training for candidates for the election as distinct from induction training after councillors are elected. I think it's pretty clear. I just have one question of the General Manager in relation to the minute. I'm asking that $10,000 be allocated as both Central Coast and Balranald are doing towards the development of this independent work. Does that need a vote, General Manager?
Mr. May, we've allocated additional funds in the 23-24 financial year to support Council with the return of the elected bodies, so no, we can accommodate that $10,000 within that allocation. Thank you.
So I think it's fair to say the staff knew this was coming. Accordingly, I would move that the administrative minute of 19 July 2023 be noted and declare that carried. We now move on to matters listed for consideration at the meeting. I did say that I would deal with item 9.4, Mountain Trails Environment Consultant first. So, General Manager, if you can deal with that matter for us, thank you.
So, Mr. May, I'll ask Mr. Robinson, the Manager Assets, to introduce this item, but before I do, if I could table some correspondence to you. So this is correspondence that Council has received between the time that the business paper was published last Friday to today. And if I may, I'll just read the names and the date that it was received. So an email from Ms. Laman, 16th of July. This is in chronological order, I apologise. Have another email from Ms. Laman, Friday the 14th of July. We have an email from Mr. Brad Haynes, Tuesday the 18th of July. We have an email from Janine McPherson, Sunday the 16th of July. An email, I believe, came in today from Ms. Jen Slattery. An email from Mr. Norman Nelson, 19th of July. An email from Ms. Christine Goodwin, 18th of July. Email from Janine McPherson, Friday the 14th of July. Email from Ms. Rowena Parry, 17th of July. Email from Ms. Rowena Parry following up on the 17th, on Tuesday the 18th of July. An email from Ms. Gay White, Tuesday the 18th of July. And Monday the 17th of July from, sorry, I believe that was Ms. Slattery's date. I'll table those.
There was also a statement from Mr. Cunningham about the bike trails and environmental consultant.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So he submitted a statement that he wished to be read out as part of the public forum, but as you stated before, we'll table as part of this correspondence.
Yeah. I do my best to read anything that comes in between the preparation, the public release of the business paper and the meeting, and that information will be attached to the minutes, and they become public documents. General Manager.
To Mr. Robinson, and I'll ask if Mr. Robinson can address some of the points that the speakers raised, and Ms. Targer, as the responsible director, may wish to add to that. And I've asked Mr. Davis to speak to the compliance matters that were raised. Okay, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, in accordance with the resolution of Council from the 21st of June Council meeting, legal advice has been sought in relation to the continuing use of the unauthorised Mount Gibraltar Heritage Reserve mountain bike trails and Council's associated exposure to risk. So I think it's important to clarify this exposure to risk includes that from the potential safety risks of the trails themselves, but also Council's adherence to environmental and planning legislative requirements. So advice has been received, and it's confirmed that Council does have a duty of care for the trails, that being a duty to warn or to restrict access commensurate to the risk present. So Council has accordingly engaged industry expert Iconic Trails to complete a risk audit of the trails of this northeast area. The audit identified that the majority of the trails, the main line of the trail does align with mountain biking guidelines, and so appropriate risk warning signage has been installed. However, 2 of the side trails did not align with guidelines, and so access restriction signage has been subsequently installed. The legal advice also confirmed that the review of the tracks through a review of environmental factors is an appropriate pathway, and doing so does ensure Council's adherence with environmental and planning legislative requirements. Also, in keeping with this advice, a request for quote has been completed for the preparation of a review of environmental factors. 5 consultancies were approached for submission, but given the condensed timeframes to get them back for today's council meeting, we only received a response from 3. Nonetheless, all 3 responses rated really highly in the non-price criteria of the assessment, with the primary determining factor being price. The review of the received submissions was done through internal staff with representation from both environmental and recreation and an independent to ensure that it was a transparent and rigorous process. As a result of the assessment, ecological surveys and plannings was found to be the preferred candidate, and so it is recommended that Council endorse the engagement of this consultant to prepare the REF, with the document anticipated to be submitted for Council's consideration to the September Council meeting. In relation to some of the comments that were raised during the public forum, I think it would be beneficial for Council to provide greater clarity as to what is non-impact maintenance of the trails. I believe in hindsight, I thought it was clear what enhancement and extension was and was not, but I think in the weeks subsequent that has proven to be a point of contention, and so it is my understanding that any works or actions that have been completed on site since that 21st of June have not been done with the intention of them being determined as extensions or enhancements, but nonetheless may still not have been appropriate. And so I think that would be an opportunity for Council to provide greater clarity for all parties as to what is non-impact maintenance over this subsequent 2-month interim period until the REF is complete. There were also concerns that potentially there might be conflicts of interest between ecological surveys and planning and Mount Gibraltar itself and the Land Care and Bush Care group. I can confirm that Stephen Douglas of Ecological Planning and Surveys is not a member of the Mount Gibraltar Land Care group, and so I'm confident that there is no conflict of interest. Nonetheless, we will manage the engagement in accordance with Council's policies and procedures and ensure that is above board. I think there are pros and cons to engaging consultants that are local as opposed to outside the area, and so I don't think there is any clear benefit to engaging someone that is not part of the Highlands. Through engaging someone who is more local, that does ensure that the assessment is done with someone who understands the reserves and the potential significances of it. In relation to the draft plan of management for Mount Gibraltar, at the request of Council, Crown Reserve called Crown Lands did do an expedited review, and so that initial review has been now received from Council, with the next step being public exhibition, I believe. And so it's anticipated that that will be submitted to the August Council meeting for release. And I believe that covers things to date. Yep.
Got it. The matter of conflicts, a conflict is with the individual. The council does its best to ensure, but it's really a matter for the individual. And I hear what you say. Just wanted to clarify that. Can I just address the question of, there's reference to the site, but in my view the site is Mount Gibraltar, because it's just not one trail. So I just want to, do you agree with me, or?
The site, my understanding is, I guess, the body of work to date has been in relation to the trails in the northeast area of the reserve, bounded by the Gib East Fire Trail. I'm aware there are other unauthorised trails that have been reactivated or have seen resurgence popularity elsewhere in the reserve, but also in keeping with that 21st of June council meeting resolution, those are subject to active decommissioning efforts.
I understand that, but it's been mentioned here today that's now going on to an app, the fact that there are trails there. Do you hold a view whether the new trails could be a result of that public notice there's trails up there?
I guess the trails have received quite a lot of publicity and prominence, but I wouldn't be able to comment, sorry.
Yeah, okay. And is there anything that's been said today or in any of the submissions that would change your view on the recommendation that's before the council?
No.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr Davis, would you like to speak about the compliance?
Thank you, General Manager. Mr Administrator, one of the things I'd take the opportunity is to clarify around there's talk of maintenance work versus extension work, and just to be clear, no works can occur in any public reserve unless by or on behalf of the authority, which in this case is council. So unless they are prior approved, no works, whether that's decommissioning, maintenance, construction, no works can occur in any public reserve without council approval. So we, for example, we have volunteer groups, their work's overseen by council, but no works to the public's clear, no work can occur without council approval, and those works need to be by and on behalf of us, so they need to be authorised by council. If and we will be, and we are, we will be enforcing that in Mount Gibraltar Reserve. If works, in accordance with the council resolution, if works are undertaken that are not approved, then under the Local Government Act, fines will be issued. If in the case of minors, those penalties go to the parents, not to the minors.
If I could just thank you two and Mr Arthur for joining me up there today, and further explaining what is going on. And it's my understanding that the Land Care Group just can't go ahead and do what they want to do without consent and direction of the council.
Through Mr. Administrator, that's correct. So we have some good volunteer groups, land care groups, but they do that under the instruction and under the guidance of council staff and council officers. Anything that's done that's not under the guidance or essentially authorised by council staff and is known about by council is similarly unauthorised works and is subject to penalty similarly.
Thank you. There's nothing else, General Manager?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say that it's clear over the last few days we've had a lot of correspondence raising concerns about works happening or extension works happening at the site, and the officers and yourself visited the site. Following that, we had a conversation, and it's clear that we do need to take a stronger stance in terms of unauthorised work or any further work to the tracks, and I understand you have a few comments to make.
Yeah, I do. Look, I basically agree with the recommendation, but I want to change the recommendation. But in doing so, I want to expand from what is described as the site to Mount Gibraltar generally. But I understand the works that are being done associated with that work, the illegal or the alleged illegal works in the northeastern sector. Look, when Council made the decision on the 21st of June to in effect defer the substance of the original recommendation and to seek legal advice, it did so in good faith. I'm conscious that bike riders saw it as a victory, and I know the volunteers were disappointed. This has not been an easy matter for Council staff, as in effect we are dealing with minors, which brings with it challenges. I'm told that numerous shovels have been removed from Mount Gibraltar since the June meeting, and I'm extremely and personally disappointed that my good intentions appear to have been taken advantage of. I visited Mount Gibraltar today with officers, and what I saw is not recreation, it's vandalism. While at the site, hard-working and dedicated environmental employees were decommissioning a new run that's been constructed on the southern side, on the southern side of Mount Gibraltar, and I had the opportunity to discuss with them their anger at the destruction of years of effort. They particularly felt for the volunteers who have given so generously of their time for generations. In my view, enough's enough. The General Manager has informed me that several warnings have been issued to minors and stronger interventions are warranted, including fines and or legal action against parents and legal guardians. I totally support this action. Parents must be aware of what their children are getting up to. The newly erected signage will, to a degree, limit the liability of council should a tragedy occur, but this is not good enough. However, I am confident that the administration is doing all within its power to ensure that all parties are aware of the risks. In saying that, I quite frankly don't believe that it's only minors that are doing both the work and using the illegally constructed trails. Work on the review of the environmental factors, as required in the June recommendation, will be a priority for the Council, with a view to it being reported to the September meeting or an extraordinary meeting if it becomes available earlier, so we can get it onto public exhibition. So having said that, I would move that the officer's recommendation be adopted, subject to the review being reported to the September Council meeting or an extraordinary meeting if available beforehand. And two, Council endorse the actions of the General Manager in undertaking stronger interventions, including fines and or legal action against parents and legal guardians if deemed necessary, and declare that carried. We can adjourn for a second if people want to leave, because we've finished with that. We'll move on to other listed matters now. We'll just adjourn for a couple of minutes. Okay,
Sorry, Mr.
look, just while we fix up this glitch, I think we'll just adjourn for 10 minutes, if you don't mind.